would start rolling, and you'd start rolling with that train. And again, it was that reciprocal energy, and it would explode. It was huge. It was bigger than the room, always.
They were one of the best bands. I mean, I'm not saying it was better than the other, but they were a great blues band with like a punk blues band, if you can imagine that, you know.
And that was a band everybody, it sounds like most people sat in with. It sounds like there was
a lot of people played,
a lot of cross-pollination with the bands, but that one specifically.
Right. Hollis was a great singer, and Jake Ransford, and they had a house down on Lafayette. They used to have great parties, so they were part of it.
Did you go to the Formalda house?
Oh, all the time. You know, it's now called the White Slapper House by the guys who live across the street.
Oh,
we called it the Formalda House, but that was what they called it.
Was it hard convincing bands to come play a spot in Brooklyn?
No, at first it was, but then like my wife Jane, who she knows a lot about the booking because she would get tons of cassette tapes that would drop off, and after a while people were like really wanted to play there. Malcolm Forbes started this new magazine called Egg, and the concept of it was new scenes before they explode, and we like got a huge write-up in that.
Today in Brooklyn, tomorrow the world. Oh, there's the bar. Okay, we have Formaldehyde Blues Train and the O-Rays over here. Oh, there's George and Alice, the dog at the bar. The bands chipped in $300 a piece and supplied their own master tapes, which were assembled into a record called Today Brooklyn, Tomorrow the World. And this quote from Frank Rossetti, I want to be real famous. I want to hang around backstage with Bon Jovi.
So the fucking phone rings the other day. I say, hello, can I help you? And she says, is this Frank Museum? She says, why don't you describe yourself to me? I say, certainly, dear. I'm about 5'10". I got long hair, beard, kind of looking like Jesus Christ in The Last Temptation of.
Well, Frank and I met in high school in theater class. He was walking down the hallway with an imaginary microphone interviewing people. So I fell in behind him with an imaginary camera. And this became a gag that we did for weeks.
She likes Led Zeppelin, he likes Public Enemy. They both agree they don't agree about anything. Pretty soon, it got late. They both had a laugh. This was some blind date. Blind date! Everybody say it! Blind date!
Came in one day in the lunchroom with a guitar and he started playing Rock and Roll Suicide by David Bowie. I said, oh my God, dude, I didn't know you could do that. He goes, oh yeah, I want to be a rock star. If I'm not a rock star by 35, I'm going to kill myself.
I was working with 5 musicians, the Franks Museum Band, who were so incredible that we were in our own bubble.
I got in the band through Doug Hitchcock, who was a drummer. Well, the band was fantastic. It just was a great cast of characters. I mean, Frank was the leader, the main songwriter, the master of ceremonies.
Frank is a consummate showman. He derives this energy from the universe and it channels through him out to the audience, completely unself-aware. There's no more Frank, there's only the performance.
Frank's Museum was a hectic circus that was big and joyous but crazy. You didn't know what was going to happen.
They had a special ingredient that no other band had, and that was Rossi.
Rossi Bright. And she had an operatic voice that just gave a whole different flavor to the band.
Frank was sweet enough and had enough of belief in me to have me join the band. You know, because I wasn't your kind of musician. I don't read music. I did everything by ear. And everyone were always so supportive and patient with me.
Rossi Bright, we had a very interesting vocal approach. A beautiful woman who was a great dancer, great sense of fashion. She did some of the artwork too. She was a great artist. And she sort of did the monkey. What is it, the monkey or the jerk? She had all her dances. She kind of balanced this really kind of raunchy looking crew of gentlemen. So we had sort of a beautiful focal point.
There were some chaotic gigs with Frank's Museum. CBGB's people jumping and diving off the stage. It was just insane. You'd come away bruised, you know.
Well, playing live was like ridiculous energy. That was the thing about this band. It was ridiculously energetic. We would kind of beat the crowd into submission with our energy. We did a song called Gandhi Lives in the Bhagwan's Body, which was basically just sort of this long jam to get everybody to go insane.
And its original length was about 11 minutes. And then we used to say, let's try and do a longer version. And at one of them, we did a 35-minute version. All shifted into a different universe for a little bit. I remember when we all came off the stage, we were just hugging each other, and it was almost like weeping.
You guys were very popular. You had a local fan base that was really strong. There was one couple who, we don't know if they met at Lauterbach's or they were previously dating and they were regulars at Lauterbach's, and they got married. They had the reception over at the picnic house in Prospect Park, and they put Frank's Museum to play.
Well, we were always on the hunt for money to record an album. So we got this opportunity to play a wedding. And weddings are like the big moneymaker. I think we were making like $800 or something. And unfortunately, I think what happened is they waxed the dance floor before the show. We played such a high energy show, people were going bananas, everybody was dancing. All of a sudden, the dance floor parts, and you see this guy on the floor, and his leg is pointing in the direction it shouldn't point. He broke his leg.
I'm in a wheelchair, out of control. I'm in a wheelchair, out of control.
That was pretty crazy. Never expected it at the wedding. And then they reached out to us later, and the guy was fine, and he was hiking again.
And I just remember them taking him out on a stretcher. You know, he had a broken leg, but he was giving us the thumbs up because he enjoyed the performance so much.
That crowd would be very receptive. All the bands played slightly different styles of indie rock, but we all liked the differences. The differences that complemented each other.
Squash some help. They're like the longest living band. Yes, yes, yes.
Every tree I ever has been, you
The band in New York couldn't change their logo.
I don't know how that happened. I really don't. I can't give you an answer. It's got a life of its own. I had children, I had everything, and somehow it just kept going. And people left, and when a guy left, I almost thought that was the end of it, and somebody fell right in, and they usually fell right in pretty good.
I felt a kiss on my cheek. I'll take a lick in my chest.
We had a lot of turnarounds. It was really me and Joe Kahn. We were the strongholds, and he passed away. I wrote the music, he wrote the words. That's how we strung things along. And when he passed away, that was a rough one. I said that's about it. You know, I can't even go up on stage without him standing next to me, you know. And our drummer was with us 17 years, it's a long time in Squirrels from Hell. And he said, no, we're going to keep it going, you know. I said, well, do what you got to do, you know. And he pretty much helped me along. He got me going.
Like that first album, Today's
Brooklyn, Tomorrow the World.
The bands on that, those are the bands I remember playing around when we first started.
Yeah.
You know, and then by the time it got to Beat This, there were like twice as many bands, and I didn't even know half of them. and then it just grew from there, I think.
Yeah.
You know.
I just want to say that Pete Rose is innocent. The next William Shakespeare, ladies and gentlemen, Al Lee Wire.
He's right about Pete, wonderful person and Christian saint that he is. Well, I woke up tonight about 9:15. I thought I'd hit the city, felt like making some time. So I walked into this local dump to hear a rag band play.
They were all my favorites. All of them had something.
It was a 5 a.m. beauty and she made me scream.
Al Lee Wire was sort of a journeyman songwriter. He was a subway worker. He'd come with his subway outfit to gigs.
So I call him the troubadour. Walter Bads, it was fantastic. He was also a bus driver.
She's giving them hell down on High Street. Her skirt's getting shorter and top's getting low. I feel like I come from a track meet. My heart beating faster than I've ever known.
Ali, Mr. Subway Man, God love him to this day. Probably, and I've said this for a long time, probably one of the best storyteller singer-songwriters I've ever had the joy to witness. Ali would pick just the most mundane of everyday occurrences in New York and would weave a story around them that was so memorable.
Trip down High Street tonight. You see the way it's a trip down on High Street tonight.
Such an amazing player, mastery of pedals like nobody's business. And it wasn't just a technique or a technician, they were an extension of his playing in the sense that he could get sounds out of those guitars that was just like, wow, where did that come from?
search of big ideas. We use some spears. It's even clearer. We come breaking out of, but in our path is freehand. Living in a jar of frogs.
Oh, it sounds great. Do it again.
Living in a jar of frogs. Living in a jar of frogs.
Is this gonna go anywhere?
Well, just put the recording on and I'll show you. Boring, because I rely on your simple principles to stop the tongue, my brain surgery. I'll be experiment. Living in a jar of frogs. Living in a jar of frogs. Living in a jar of frogs.
Now, Cryptic Soup was this. I always thought of them as like a cult. They were like beyond progressive. They would have a song, da 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 do 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 da da do. Hey baby, then we're going to a swing.
Low power. Loneliness ain't no excuse for being at home. There came a point in my life to want to.
I got into Cryptic Soup because I was working at a very large corporate law firm at the time. Vinny was working at the same firm. We were both extremely into the Beatles, and we were both into all the obscure Beach Boys music, not the earliest Surfing Cars, but all of Brian Wilson's kind of, and we would trade tapes all the time. And he kept telling me about his band, Cryptic Soup. So I actually went to see them at Lauterbach's play before I joined the band. I was at Lauterbach's. We jammed together a few times, and he just said, like, Johnny, I want you in the band. I was like, Vinny, what are you talking about? He goes, no. Like, we're recording some stuff right now, but you gotta be in the band. You gotta start playing. Even though that first album I was on, they had the whole thing pretty much totally recorded. They brought me to the studio so I could add at least one track on every single song.
I've been waiting for you. I've been up all night till the next morning.
We were recording out at Mixolydian Studio, and I'd bring every instrument that I owned. Vinny just wanted me to play something on every single song.
I felt like Cryptic Soup was like Yes or Genesis meets Brooklyn Beat, because the songs were so complicated and elaborate, but again, very, very unique. And he had the brothers, Eddie and Vinny, who I both worshipped. And I was lucky enough to play in a band with Eddie about 5 years ago. And still to this day, one of the best drummers I ever played with.
Like they had a third gear. Like they'd get through the first 2 years and then they'd jump into the third gear. And then it was just, from there on, they would just roll.
My life's a cat, I know the misfortune, but that comes last. Always in trouble, I don't have a name, always singing double.
Technical expertise. These guys would play these crazy time signatures and change them. Do 3 different time signatures in a song.
Great and subway, not much to choose.
A lot of songs that we did were in time signatures of 5 or 7. We had one song that we did that was, believe it or not, I call it was 19. Because it was, each verse was in 2 parts, a 10 and a 9. And how we managed to keep that together, I have no idea. Something about that time, it just seemed so exciting, and I was able to do that.
I think the Brooklyn Beat was very much representative of what was going on in a lot of cities around America at that time. It wasn't so much a direct influence on something, but it was a mirror of what later happened in Seattle. It was a mirror of what, you know, the punk scene that was in DC, a mirror of some things in LA.
Barbara wore a halter to the day and attacked to attract on the guys that would fly away. You could tell that she had what it takes. A great figure and a lovely face. Man magnet is what she called herself. Anyone caught in her power couldn't help themselves. It's kind of tricky how this rhyme's gonna fit, but that girl soaked for life.
That was the idea of Like West Pocket, combining like pop songs that are sort of alternative rock with dance music. Something in the air was happening because that became a very big thing in the following years. And we played with a drum machine, so I had no intention of getting a drummer, especially because a lot of the songs had kind of a dance beat. And Cynthia, you know, my girlfriend, soon to be my wife, it was all about the drum machine.
But does it really much matter to you every day? How can you know when you know what you feel? Is what you know you feel the real deal? Here's one thing that is very concrete. My friend Barbara in a halter top.
He was a neurologist at the time at Lincoln Hospital in the Bronx. And everybody was like, oh my gosh, she's a rock and roll keyboard player and a neurologist.
Alec, who really is inspired by the Beach Boys, mostly more than anybody, wrote great lyrics, wrote great pop songs. His wife at the time was a really good piano player, added a nice vocal touch.
Alec and Cynthia, I loved their interplay on stage. And then with them being a couple too, it was interesting because personally I haven't had that experience where I could be on stage with my other half. That would never have worked for me. And watch them work together and work off of each other. Again, it didn't feel like a competition, it was just this, we're gonna make this work together.
As being in a band with your wife, a lot of times it doesn't work out well, as we know through rock history, and Cynthia and I decided to become parents, and our daughter Julia Cumming was born in January of 1996. But having a baby really, really kind of meant the end of Like West Pocket. Even though we tried to keep the band going, our energy was elsewhere. By the way, Julia is a bass player and is in a popular indie rock band called Sunflower Bean, and has been far more successful than either her mom or dad. You know, and she kind of laughs about it. She's like, how could you expect me not to be in a rock band? Like, my mom and dad we played music constantly. We were always like talking about, she kind of just took our rock star dreams and kind of ran with it.
We didn't really follow trends because every band was really different, you know, from punk to some country to everything. So it was just music, you know. And at the time when we started getting reviews, it was really interesting, you know.
We were just happy for all the bands in that scene and getting any recognition because it was hard to do, and especially Brooklyn wasn't really on the map at that time. It was kind of a seed growing out of a suburb of Manhattan, and it had something to say.
Today, Brooklyn, tomorrow, the world, right? These people want the whole world to know that beyond Manhattan, creative forces exist, right?
Brooklyn is here to stay, so this is for you, Joe.
And to all my friends on Coney Island, I'm going to tell you one thing, I'll be on the roller coaster tonight, right?
At one point, when Louderbacks was happening, and we were getting all this attention, 3 or 4 of these bands are going to get signed. We're going to get signed, you know, that was the vibe, you know. And then Formaldehyde Blues Chain got signed to a small label. Bob Woodruff got signed to Chrysalis. When people were shorter lived by the water, got signed to Shimmy Disc.